disregard for a parking problem.
Here goes the radio. I'm an MP at Quantico, and there's definitely been a couple of weird things I've seen on nights patrolling Westside. So I've been at Quantico for about 2 years as an MP. For those that don't know about Quantico, it's set up with 2 sides. Main side, where everything is, east of Interstate 95, and the appropriately named West Side, where they do TBS, the basic school for officers, and all the ranges. West Side is pretty damn massive. Like, I'm talking it would take 2 to 3 hours to drive around it, and it has all of these unused back roads and old cemeteries from homesteads dotting the landscape. Plenty of forgotten training areas too, dating back to World War II. When I was on night shift, I always asked to be the roving unit out there, because it would give me a chance to scout out places to hunt or fish on my off days, and being the only unit out there and being left alone was pretty nice to just skate or, do my own thing over my 10-hour shift. Now, I'm not a stranger to the woods or to the outdoors or anything. I grew up running around the mountains for quail and deer in Southern California as a kid, and spent a ton of nights out camping by myself in my teens. So there's really not much out there in nature that freaks me out. But one night, in about November, when the nights get really dark real fast, I was done posting Marines out on the gates and was heading up to a far-off training area. I had my tree stand and trail camera that I'd previously set up and wanted to go take a look to see if anything had been around. To get there, you have to drive about 30 minutes up one road and then another 15 until you hit a long dirt road that dissects that part of the base in half. And in this particular area, comms always sucks, so without a working radio, you're pretty much out there on your own. I parked my Durango on the offshoot. I grabbed my flashlight and started off heading into this creek bottom about a mile or so off the road. I've done this a ton of times, so I got there pretty fast. I grab the chip out of my trail cam and I hop up into my tree stand to take a look at it and to kill some time. And not even 5 minutes into flipping through pictures, most of which were of just some turkey that were hanging around, I hear someone, and I say someone because I thought it was a person, walking through the woods about 30 yards in front of me. Now this is like the middle of the night on a training base, so a lieutenant who got lost doing Nightland Nav isn't out of the question. So I'm thinking maybe this is my chance to mess with them from up in my stand. So I quickly close my laptop and I turn off my flashlight and I try looking out to see where they were. And I hear them walk closer and closer and then stop about 20 yards in front of me. And at that point, with the illume being fairly bright that night, I could make out the outline of what looked like a deer, which was kind of disappointing. So I just stayed quiet to watch where he was heading so I wouldn't spook him. And all of a sudden, this thing starts bashing its head against a tree over and over and over and over until its entire skull cap was crushed and it was leaking blood and brain matter. Then this effing thing stands up on its hind legs and turns towards me as though it was staring directly at me, even with its eyes being clearly now useless. And then it spoke in the clearest tone I have ever heard in my life.
I know you're there.
My stomach dropped. And I was too frozen in fear to even think to draw my pistol. But then, as quickly as it had walked up, this thing dropped back down onto all fours and walked away. I waited about 10 minutes, shaking like a leaf, trying to calm down before I left my laptop, I left everything. I just hauled ass out of there, got out of my stand, ran back to my patrol car, and I grabbed my shotgun, and I sat for the rest of the night in the lit parking lot of the MCX. took about a month before I summoned up the courage to go back, grab my laptop and stuff I'd left there. And I went with a friend who I didn't tell what had happened, but I told him to bring his long gun as well. When I got there, I grabbed my stuff and I looked towards where the thing had been. And the tree was busted up with splinters everywhere and what looked like, the bone fragments and the mess, the blood scattered on the ground. Needless to say, I don't go out checking stuff in the middle of the night anymore, and I hunt on the complete opposite side of the base. And anytime I do need to go by there now, I always take a shotgun in condition 1. I told my Navajo grandpa about this, and he told me not to speak about it, but clearly, I don't listen well. It freaked the hell out of me. Got me so messed up to the point where I don't even like going in the woods anymore. It happened while we were in port. We had a ship-wide blackout. As a damage control petty officer, it was my job to perform maintenance on the ship. So my chief told me he wanted me to walk around the ship and test some of the emergency lighting while the power was out. It was simple enough. I would get to explore some new parts of the ship in the dark, and all I had to do was push a button and see if the lights turned on. But this was the first time I would be going down to Auxiliary Room 2. Now, at the time the story takes place, I was fairly new to the ship, and I had started hearing some stories about a room on the ship, an engineering space called Auxiliary Room 2. And when I first heard the stories, I honestly didn't believe it too much. But different people had claimed to have strange experiences in and around that area. And to add to the weirdness, to me, the experiences seemed to be gender-specific. For instance, several of my female colleagues said they couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching them, while my male colleagues said it felt like someone was about to attack them. Now, I enjoy being creeped out as much as anyone else, but, I figured those kinds of stories could just be explained by people wanting to believe there was something strange going on, right? And then psyching themselves out. After my chief told me what to do, I informed some of the ship's engineering personnel that I was heading down to that part of the ship to work. They then gave me these wide-eyed expressions and firmly told me that I shouldn't go down there by myself. And I wasn't sure if they were being serious, but I told them I didn't really have a choice. I sincerely doubted my chief would let me out of performing my duties because of a ghost. But then some of the newer engineers said they wanted to come with me, just to see if the odd stories were true. I have to admit, I was happy to have them come along, as I certainly wouldn't mind the company, and the stories were now making me feel a little bit on edge. So, we headed down into the belly of the ship, and over to Auxiliary Room 2. What the hell? When I entered the room, as soon as my foot touched the deck, it was like I could feel the air change. And goosebumps broke out all over my body. My stomach just felt like it was sinking, and I was filled with this inexplicable feeling of dread. Did you guys feel that? And I look over my shoulder to see that the two engineers had ended up staying up in the ladder well, and they were clearly refusing to go any further. And I wasn't sure if this was all just happening in my head, but I just didn't feel right being in that room. And to make things worse, it was completely dark in the compartment because the power was cut off from the main breaker on the ship. So now I am navigating through this area with just a flashlight.
What was that?
I don't know. I thought the power was off.
Maybe we should just go.
I'm almost done. When I was about halfway done with my walkthrough, I heard the machinery make a cranking noise, but I knew that should have been impossible because the power was off. And when I paused to try and figure out why I was hearing something, suddenly there was a loud banging sound from somewhere deeper in this pitch black compartment, and some of the emergency lights started to flicker on and off. And not a second later, I heard a loud voice screaming, "Get out, get out, get out, get out," over and over again. The two guys with me who were still up in the ladder well, they apparently didn't hear the voice, but they did hear the loud banging. And as soon as they did, they started yelling and ran back up the ladder. And I just followed as quickly as I could. It was my immediate reaction was to get the hell out of there. Needless to say, that was enough to convince me something was going on in there. Possibly still is. And the rest of the time I was on ship, I refused to go back. I found out later, after returning from deployment, that the year before I was stationed there, the ship had attempted a rescue of some refugees after their boat capsized. The rescue attempt went horribly, apparently. The refugees were panicked, and there were eyewitness reports of men pushing women and children down into the water to save themselves. And some of those people ended up drowning before they could make it on board, and the crew was forced to store their bodies in the ship's freezer. And you want to know the freaky part? Where was the freezer located? Right above Auxiliary Room 2. Hey, Mac, go ahead and shut her off. Williams.
Yes, sir.
Sun will be up soon. Go ahead and cut the engines. We'll, drift with the current for a while.
You got it.
Throughout the war, American teams were deployed deep behind enemy lines in the conduct of guerrilla warfare, hoping to cut off the enemy supply lines, to stop the harassment of locals, and to destroy any hidden bases and weapon depots they might find. A two-boat team of 8 soldiers has likewise been inserted on a search and destroy mission, cruising in their patrol boats along a river just north of the DMZ, their mission lasting throughout the night and into the early morning hours. At the onset of these night missions, a curfew had been implemented. Locals had been warned to remain at home, since the men had trouble seeing in the dark, and the standard procedure for these missions was to fire on anything that moved, with the presumption being that anyone caught out at night, whether on the river or in the jungle, would be an enemy soldier. Enemy fire could break out from the shoreline at any time without warning, so the men were on constant guard, their eyes warily scanning the riverbank for any sign of movement or other indication of enemy presence. But now that the sun was coming up and visibility was improving, these men would have to begin operating under more restrictive guidelines for firing on unknown targets. This might explain why, for some unknown reason, The patrol officer ordered the boats to the shoreline to conduct a short reconnaissance patrol away from the river. After leaving the boats and passing through a section of trees, the men reached the edge of a large jungle clearing. Perhaps they wanted to mark the location as a possible drop zone for future patrol inserts or extractions by helicopter. Whatever their reasons, these men couldn't help but notice that this section of jungle was eerily quiet. They had long become accustomed to hearing the constant droning sounds of insects, monkeys, and birds. But now, this notable silence could mean the presence of human activity, possibly that of enemy soldiers. Perhaps that is what prompted their commander to conduct this investigation. Moving into the clearing in the dim light, at some point the team began noticing a number of piles of what appeared to be animal dung scattered around the area. As they momentarily paused to examine these unusual piles, they suddenly heard crashing sounds coming from the nearby tree line. They were shocked to see what appeared to be several large humanoid creatures lumbering out of the dense brush, heading straight for them. These things were unlike anything they'd ever seen, tall, at least 7 or 8 feet in height, with bright yellow skin and 3-digit hands and feet, with fingers and toes that ended in sharp claws. The faces of these strange creatures were flat and sported large, snake-like eyes, with only a couple of slits for a nose. The creatures were on top of them before they even had a chance to react. But surprisingly, these giant, yellow-skinned beings were said to have passed right by these men, seemingly not even paying attention to them at all, disappearing once again into the opposite tree line. Completely spooked by the encounter, the frightened soldiers decided to immediately return to their boats. But as they moved through the section of jungle between the clearing and the river, they once again heard the loud sounds of jungle brush being trampled behind them. Whatever the creatures were, they were now following them. The men broke into a run themselves, their own loud movements now adding to the noise of the crashing sounds behind them, which indicated the creatures were drawing closer and closer. Some of the men aimed their rifles behind them, firing blindly, but it seemed to have no effect on slowing down their pursuers. Terrified, bursting through the tree line and clambering into their boats on the riverbank, the men apparently continued to fire on these creatures, watching them twitch as the bullets seemed to bounce off of their hard, scaly skin. Confused and likely terrified themselves at the sight of these monsters, the coxswains quickly pulled their crafts away from the riverbank and throttled them away. As they left, the men purportedly saw the haunting sight of dozens of these massive humanoids, now gathered along the riverbank, watching them leave. The shoreline seemed to be illuminated by a powerful glow, emanating from the creatures' bodies. My name is Chris. I'm ex-Canadian Army. This happened in Afghanistan, Operation Athena, the Canadian contingent to ISAF. It was during winter, late 2000s, Kandahar province. Our company group, comprised of mechanized infantry mounted in LAV 3s and some Leopard tanks, engineers, combat service support, we deployed for a 4 or 5 day operation to sweep some villages along the Arghandab River. On the first night, we halted in the middle of the riverbed, which was dry at this time of the year. It's about a half a kilometer wide, so if you park in the middle of it, you'd get a clear view for a couple hundred meters on either side, making it impossible for any bad guys to sneak up on you in the night. For these kinds of overnight halts, we'd stop in a big circle with the fighting vehicles, tanks and LAV 3s, around the perimeter, facing out, while the support vehicles parked in the middle. The vehicles on the perimeter would take turns being up, providing security for their part of the ring. Picture 20 vehicles in a circle, with the ones at 12, 3, 6, and 9 o'clock being up, meaning their crews are awake, slewing their turrets, scanning their thermal imagers, and covering their sectors. Then, after an hour, the next vehicle to the right of each of those takes over and relieves the previous vehicle, and so forth throughout the night. You do this, of course, so that everyone can get some sleep, but also provide constant security against enemy attacks. After we formed our perimeter, got the dismounts out, and started settling in for the night, the shift schedule came over the radio, informing us that we had the second shift scheduled to start in an hour, and another 1 or 2 shifts later in the night. The back of one of these LAVs is basically a big open compartment with benches on either side that the infantry dismount sits on. But the infantry guys are now sleeping in a shallow ditch behind the LAV, so the gunner and the crew commander, which is me, got to sleep inside on those benches. Better than sleeping in the dirt, I suppose. The driver sleeps in his station up front. Since we had to be up in an hour for security watch anyway, the gunner, driver, and I decided to just lay awake in our sleeping bags, reading, watching movies, and playing PSP respectively until it was time for our shift. About a half an hour before our shift started, we heard and felt the distinct sounds and movements of someone climbing up onto the LAV. It's a heavy vehicle, but you still know when someone's climbing onto it. And in that scenario, it probably means someone's coming to wake you up and make you do something. So the gunner and I, laying across from each other, we look at each other, we sit up, give a collective sigh, bracing for one of the hatches above our heads to pop open and to start being told what to do by some sergeant. But nothing happened. It just went quiet. I was confused. We would have heard and felt if they had climbed or jumped off the LAV. I stood up and opened the hatch above the bench so I could pop my head out and see what was going on. There was nobody on top of the LAV that I could see, but the LAV has a big turret, and I figured maybe whoever it was went to the driver's hatch up front and was talking to him. So I climbed right out of my hatch, got up on top of the LAV, then climbed on top of the turret to look towards the driver's hatch. And there was still nobody in sight, and nowhere for anyone to hide. Now I'm really perplexed. From on top of the turret, I can see all the ground between me and the flanking vehicles. I can see where the troops are sleeping. I can see the support vehicles in the center of the ring, and I have a clear view of the riverbed for hundreds of meters. There isn't a single soul moving around anywhere. And at this point, I go from perplexed to concerned. We are in hostile territory after all, and having unknown persons crawling on your LAV in the dead of night is a bad thing. I get back in and explain the situation to the other two guys and instruct them to lock all the hatches from the inside since we apparently can't account for who or what is crawling on our LAV. From there, we just waited for our shift to start, performed it as usual, and went back to bed. We heard no other mysterious people or things crawling on top of the LAV. But the next day, our driver told us something crazy. That next morning, our company group moved to the first village we were sweeping, so we dismounted our infantry and then provided overwatch with our turret. As soon as things quieted down on the radio, the driver got on the intercom and told us something else happened later that night. He said that at some point between shifts, he decided he couldn't sleep and started watching movies on his laptop. As he was zoning out, all of a sudden, he felt a hand on the back of his head that brushed forward over the top, running fingers through his hair. He whipped his head around, expecting to see one of us had crawled past the turret to mess with him, but nobody was there. The gunner and I did not believe him at first. We thought maybe he was trying to scare us by adding to the weird experience we had earlier that night. But after a while, it became clear he was being dead serious. He was genuinely creeped out. In the days that followed, we became convinced that something supernatural was going on with that LAV. We debated trying to investigate whether any of the previous occupants of that LAV had been killed. These vehicles stay in Afghanistan for the entire occupation, and they're handed from outgoing troops to incoming troops when the tour rotations happen. We decided, however, that we probably just didn't want to know, and we're better off just ignoring it. Nothing else happened for the rest of the tour, either in that LAV or anywhere else in our company, at least that I know of. All right, listen up. All right, gents, you know the drill. You've got your point cards. As soon as we break from here, you're going to plot your points, and you're going to get out there and get it done. The sooner we finish, the sooner we can get out of here. So try not to lollygag out there. No white lights, red lenses only. Do I have any questions? Okay, hop to it. This is about something unexplained that happened to me about 9 years ago when I was a PFC in a sniper section on Fort Drum. So this is in upstate New York. So we were training for the upcoming expert infantry badge, and being obsessed with being the best in the battalion, we were going to training area 1 to do land navigation just about every other day after work. For those that have never been to training area 1, it's really not that big. It's about 2 clicks by 1 click, that's kilometers. But because of the insane snowfall, it's thick and swampy as all hell. The particularly strange thing about this training area is that there are a bunch of old colonial graveyards and settlements. They're mostly behind signs that say off limits by order of the commander, but you can still stumble on them accidentally, especially at night when you're running these land nav courses. These points had individual designators, and by this point I had run this course so many times I could tell you which point you had just by looking at where it was plotted on the map. If you're not familiar with land navigation in the military, they give you a map and they give you a 10-digit grid point. And so you plot your grid point so you demonstrate that you actually know how to use the map. And then you have to walk out to this grid point. And once you find it, the specific point, sometimes it can be really hard to find. It's like an engineering stake stuck in the ground. And attached to that engineering stake is a hole punch. And each individual stake spread out throughout this training area has a unique hole punch. And they give you a scorecard that you punch once you get to the point. And so then when you bring the scorecard back, they know if you got the right point or not. And so you can't cheat. So you still have to walk your happy ass all the way out to each point. So one night, our section was out doing some night iterations. It was around midnight. And I got a point at the top northeast corner of the training area. Remember that. Northeast corner. And I remember it being a very low illumination night, with a heavy cloud cover, so very little ambient light, no moonlight, starlight, etc. And I had just punched the hole on my scorecard at this grid point when I heard the strangest noise ahead of me, and I just froze when I heard it. It sounded like something had just blown out a breath in the brush, the vegetation directly in front of me. I hit the area with my red lens flashlight, but all I could see was a strange fog that was now developing. Alarms started going off in my brain. Something was not right. I tried to go by protocol. Stop, look, listen, smell, think. Because there was no fog that night. And this fog, it had an odor to it. But almost a synthetic type of smell that I had never smelled before. And then I heard the noise again. But this time I noticed that it's almost deliberate. So I close one of my eyes to preserve my night vision, and I try my white lens, but the fog just ruins it. It reflects most of the light, and it makes it even harder to see. So I turn off my light, and I take a couple of cautious steps forward. And this time, when I hear the noise again, my brain thinks mechanical. It sounds mechanical. I take a couple more steps forward, and I start to hear what sounded like tones and beeps coming very faintly from the area right in front of me. So once again I hit it with my white light, but this time, even through the fog, I can see that my light is almost casting a shadow, like a veiled shadow on the trees, but from something that is right in front of me. But I can't see anything. So as I start to step around and move my light to try and figure out what it is that I'm seeing or not seeing, I hear a hollow thump just before a blinding flash of light takes over my vision. All I see is white light, and there's an overwhelming ringing sound in my ears. Then it's complete darkness. It's like a television turning off. Then I come to. And now I'm walking, but I'm on a gravel road. I was out in the woods, and now I'm on a gravel road. I feel intensely groggy, and my limbs feel very heavy, exhaustingly heavy. I stop, wondering how the hell I got here. I'm missing my map, but I still have my scorecard tucked into my pocket. And I look around and realize that I have no clue where I am. So I take out my phone and I try to check where I am on Google Maps. my phone is now dead. I started walking down the road until I came to the main road and found that I was now standing, I'm very familiar with this training area, I was now standing at the southwest corner of the training area. I pressed the light on my watch, and I see that only 15 minutes has gone by since I found my last point. I started to panic because now I'm starting to remember what happened just before the light and everything blacked out. I think a combination of my head, which was now throbbing, and the anxiety, I felt nauseous, and I immediately started puking my guts out right there on the road. I still could not believe that I was standing where I was, but I trusted my instinct. I didn't have a map, and I followed the road back to the rally point. I had recently had surgery on my groin, and it had healed enough that it wasn't in pain throughout the day, but at this point, the surgery site is now on fire. It's like if you ever had an injury like that, it's like a burning pain deep down, but it was numb at the skin. It was a weird sensation. So I get to the rally point, and now I am stunned to silence because I find that I'm one of the first ones back. So I handed my scorecard, get 100%. I had all my points. That was my last point where everything blacked out. They didn't even ask about my map. Someone told me that I look like shit and to go drink water, eat some chow, and rack out, get some sleep for a bit somewhere while we waited for everyone else to finish and come back. So first, I go to take a piss and to look at my scar to make sure that I didn't, mess anything up while running around out there, reopen the wound or something. But when I popped my trousers, I saw that my pubic hair was gone. Sorry. I'm sure nobody expected the story to go here. But I was now completely bare. Not just shaved, but, baby smooth. Nothing was damaged. There were no razor marks, no stubble. There was no loose hair, no incisions. The skin was just numb at the surface with that deep burning pain beneath. And this messed me up pretty bad. And I was so confused. And I didn't tell anyone about this for years. And when I did, I wouldn't say anything about that last part. It was too weird. Too real. And it used to make me panic and, tear up, just choke up just trying to think about it. I felt, I don't know, I felt molested. It was, part of me honestly wants to think that I just got drugged and molested by some weirdo, because I'm not quite sure I'm ready for what I really think happened. I think I found something that I wasn't supposed to find, something that didn't want to be found. I think that something took me, maybe inspected me a bit, found a fresh example of human medical science that they wanted to take a closer look at, my surgery. I think I found a craft that was having malfunctions or something, so maybe they thought to put it down somewhere thick, in those woods while they figure it out. I also am pretty certain they had some kind of cloaking device that was supposed to keep me from finding them or seeing them. And once I got as close as I did, acting like I would assume they thought I could see them and decided to grab me before I bolted. I honestly think they must have done something akin to an ultrasound or something on my surgical site, probably pushing on it or maybe even opening me up to see what was done. I really don't know, but I didn't notice anything other than the strange pain and the particularly efficient removal of hair. What's crazy to me is not only that I was more than 2 clicks on the other side of the map as the crow flies in roughly 15 minutes, but that's as the crow flies. I mean, there's things you got to go around. There's trees, there's ditches, there's creeks, and but that the area is actually on post in the cantonment area. It's really not a wild place. That's what makes me think that this thing had to be something passing through or something. I suppose they could have known of humans settling there in the past and came back to check it out again, all those old settlement ruins that are out there. I don't think it was planned or that they were even out to do anything like that. I think, my curiosity got the better of me and they felt they had to stun me or something. I don't know. I have no clue what really happened. I didn't actually see anything. It just happened to me. I don't know. I've had years to overthink this and to try to make sense of it. And all I have now are a lot of largely baseless theories, unfortunately. In 2015, I was placed on desk duty in the barracks on a 24-hour rotation, charge quarters, as it's officially called. We sit at the desk for 24 hours, from 9 a.m. until 9 a.m. the following morning, often passing the time with books, video games, homework, or movies, and intermittently doing patrols, conducting these roving inspections of the barracks, just trying to maintain orderliness, especially at night, making sure guys aren't making a lot of noise or being too rowdy, that kind of thing. And of course, if anything serious happens, we're there to respond to it and to report it as quickly as possible. But on occasion, this particular duty also requires that we monitor any high-risk soldiers that have been confined to the barracks because they unfortunately pose a safety risk to others or themselves, but have not been psychologically evaluated yet and are likely going to be discharged. The military is probably like most jobs. You get all types. And I get it that the country has a lot of respect for its service members, and so do I. That's why I wanted to serve. But once you get to boot camp, the reality is that you quickly realize there are some strange dudes that try to join the military. And some of these guys, quite honestly, should never be allowed to hold a loaded weapon. I'm guessing most of the super weird ones don't make it past the recruiting office, but then the recruiters are always under pressure to meet their quotas, and some of these guys slip through the cracks. But in some cases, they still don't even make it through boot camp. Mental health problems show up, and they realize they don't want to be there anymore, but you can't just quit boot camp. You signed a contract, so they suddenly try to throw themselves off of the 3rd floor. Then they spend the next few days handcuffed to a bed or otherwise being escorted everywhere they go, including the bathroom, until the army figures out what to do with them. And then one day, you don't see them anymore. But some of these guys that I'm talking about, they make it through boot camp and they get sent to their first unit. And one of the guys in my unit was one we all thought probably never should have enlisted. He was an angry, hate-filled individual that never progressed past private second class in his 20 months in uniform. It is rare that someone can remain at such a low rank for so long, and he never got promoted because he was a troublemaker. And this guy was also rumored to be interested in the occult and was said to practice rituals and dark magic in the barracks. What I do know for a fact, though, was that when he was finally discharged, he left his barracks room in a complete and disgusting mess. The toilet had been broken and didn't flush, but he had continued to use it, probably for weeks. In the closet, there were mountains of trash and rotten food in the sink and the refrigerator. The shower was also filled with garbage and water, so wet garbage. I don't think this guy really used his shower much anyway. But aside from the awful mess, there were strange things in the room as well. When the commander, first sergeant, the supply sergeant, and I went into his room to inspect it, we found chicken bones tied together, hanging on strings from the ceiling. They had been lashed together in what appeared to be archaic symbols of some kind. We counted roughly 24 of these things before we just quit counting. The floor was covered in grime, and there was a ring of candles that in the center of the room that had clearly been lit on the floor in a circular fashion. And all of the furniture had been stacked out of the way or shoved in the closet. I will spare you the description of the smell. So, considering the rumors that we had heard, this guy's room not only matched his personality and his work ethic, but it certainly suggested occult activity. The whole room had this unsettling feeling to it. I joined the military in my late 20s, and I had a good amount of life experience by then, which, admittedly, included a brief interest I had in the occult when I was in my late teens. As I told my superiors in the room, who were likewise creeped out, I wasn't really fazed by the bones hanging or the candles. It all looked pretty run-of-the-mill nerds in the basement with a paperback edition of Necronomicon that they'd bought on Amazon. But the air in the room, it felt wrong. And I couldn't tell at the time if it was just the smell or the filth that was making me uneasy, but whatever the reason, none of us wanted to stay in there very long. We quickly left, and our command called a special cleanup team and put in a work order to have the room stripped and cleaned by professionals. And after they were finished, the room was spotless. But in the months following this dirtbag getting kicked out of the army, the soldiers sitting barracks duty would start quietly talking about hearing things in that room, which had remained unoccupied. And occasionally, reports about the room would be made in the logbooks, actually written down. Something along the lines of, I heard some sort of sound from room such and such, CQ investigates, finds nothing, smells burning plastic, cannot find source, no electrical appliances in the room, will monitor and notify my replacement. But usually, these reports, particularly the noises, were brushed off as soldiers playing pranks and, trying to spook the new guys on duty. And so a couple of months after the rumors started, my name finally comes up on the duty roster. And it was a Thursday night. The rest of our unit was mostly off base this night. They were doing field training, meaning the barracks was mostly empty. And my CQ runner and I were quietly going about our business. The room in question is halfway down the hallway from the duty desk, so it's pretty close. So we're sitting there at the desk, and suddenly... we both hear some sort of roar, a really loud sound that definitely came from that room. It didn't sound like a dinosaur from Jurassic Park or something from a video game. The best I can describe it, this sounded like metal tearing while someone played a recording of a scream, except it was distorted and played in reverse. The soldier with me later described it as a car accident, and when he was asked to clarify what he meant, he said it was like the loud part of a metal collision with no buildup or drop-off, just sudden noise. That's what he said. But anyway, being the senior ranking guy, I kind of walk down the hall to check this out, and I instruct the CQ runner to call the barracks representative, the LNO, and have him get to the desk as soon as possible so he can come open up the room. 5 minutes later, the LNO and I are using his master key to gain access to this creepy-ass room, while the private covers the front desk, staying with the phone. As soon as we enter the room, we are hit with the smell of dog shit and burned plastic. That's what it smelled like. Neither of us can identify the source because the room looks completely clean. But we sweep the entire room, every nook and cranny, and we find nothing. But we both later said that we had this really horrible feeling, like we were being watched the entire time. You know the feeling? Anyway, we found nothing that would tell us where this horrible smell in the room was coming from. We agreed then just to re-secure the room and to not even log the incident because, the room is empty, And the barracks rep wasn't even there to hear the noise, so he didn't even know whether to believe us or not. And I, for one, didn't want to press the issue and end up looking like some crazy idiot when someone up the chain of command reads the report. So anyway, we walk back to the door to leave the room, and I walk out first. I open the door, I walk out, and as this lieutenant turns to pull the door closed behind us, some kind of massive force suddenly hits the door from inside the room, shoving the lieutenant out of the doorway and slamming the door shut.
Did we leave a window open or something? No, sir.
Now, because all of the barracks rooms have those hydraulic door closers at the top that would prevent that sort of thing from even happening, I mean, you would really have to push on that thing to slam it shut that quickly, let alone slamming it so hard it could move a grown man. Honestly, no, you would probably have to unhook the closer or break it, because otherwise slamming that door should be impossible for any normal person to do with that kind of resistance. And the hydraulic arm wasn't broken. I had just opened the door, and we had just walked into the room. The door was working fine when we entered the room, and the windows were shut when we checked the room. So something slammed that door, and it wasn't the wind. Out of instinct, getting pushed out of a room, the LNO immediately tries to open the lock again to see what the hell just did that. But this time the key card wouldn't even work. And after a few times of trying the lock, with neither of us really even wanting to go back in anyway, we said screw it, and we just left. We agreed not to report any of this for obvious reasons. And after that incident, I kept an ear out, because I lived in that barracks, but I didn't hear anything like that noise again. But at least on one other occasion, when I ended up sitting duty again, even while the room was still unoccupied, I could swear I heard what sounded like some kind of shuffling coming from the room, like someone was moving around inside. But that time I just decided to ignore it, and I ordered my CQ runner to just stay the hell away from the room as well. To this day, none of us have the foggiest idea of what was going on in there. And I'm not even sure if they ever started using the room again, but I sure as hell don't envy the next guy that has to sleep in there. Are you a soldier who loves being cold and wet? Do you hate the sun? Are you perhaps a vampire? If so, you will love Joint Base Lewis McChord. Previously called Fort Lewis before it merged with the McChord Air Force Base in 2010, the northern section of the base, now called Jblm North, became a hub for activity in the 1940s, when the fort was a training and transition point for soldiers serving in World War II. In the early 2000s, after 50 years of insufficient funding and other setbacks, the base finally started to demolish many of the older World War II-era buildings and barracks to make way for new construction. Despite the overhaul of the base's infrastructure, some of the older, more iconic buildings had survived being torn down. And over the previous decades, these buildings had avoided demolition by being remodeled and repurposed many times over. A former Army officer, Jefferson Davis, who had served on the base and developed an interest in the paranormal, he explained in his 2005 book, Ghosts, Critters, and Sacred Places, that there is one building on the base that has garnered more ghostly attention than most, and that is the building now known as the Jblm Army Museum, which is one of, if not the oldest building on the installation. Originally a massive recreation facility for soldiers called Green Park that was built over a century ago, just after World War I, when the base was still called Camp Lewis. Over the years, the building was repurposed several times. In 1919, it began as a popular rec center filled with concession stands, theaters, eating places, a skee-ball arcade, shooting gallery, barbershop, a hotel, all of which the base commander, who it was named after, Major General Green, had built in hopes of keeping his soldiers away from the more unscrupulous, what he called dens of vice that had sprung up just outside of the base. However, after a short period of success, the building quickly became unused after the war's end, and the majority of soldiers started leaving active service. By 1938, much of the now unused building had been torn down, and all that was left was the hotel. Before that happened, though, Green Park had once served to house the extras and film crew workers during the production of a 1927 patriotic silent film called The Patent Leather Kid. And that's where things started to get weird. With the film crew and cast staying in the Green Park building and the attached 150-room hotel, which was called the Red Shield Inn, the story goes that a worker on the film was murdered in a room on the second floor during production. And later, maids and hotel staff would swear they had seen the ghost of a man dressed as a cowboy wandering the halls. He always seemed to be sad or angry, or so the story goes. Now, because it goes so far back, none of the available sources for this story can tell us when the hotel staff had these encounters, whether it was in the 1930s, the 40s, 50s, 60s, or so on. But considering the film was a World War I reenactment, and that most ghosts people report seeing appeared to be wearing clothing that pertains to what they were wearing when they died, it begs the question why these women described seeing a cowboy. I watched the entire film, and there wasn't a single cowboy anywhere in it. But perhaps the women who saw what they thought was a cowboy, particularly because of the hat he was wearing, we can perhaps reason that unfamiliar with older military uniforms, they were simply doing their best to describe something that does appear in the film: an American soldier wearing a World War I campaign hat, which has a similar shape to a cowboy hat. Whatever it was, others staying and working in the hotel over the following decades would continue to report strange sounds, malfunctioning alarms, and the feeling of a heavy, mysterious chill. The hotel was used as a guest house up until 1972 for soldiers and their families who were transitioning to and from the base. But by 1973, the new fire and safety protocols deemed the building to be uninhabitable because of the heavy amount of asbestos used in construction, and contractors then gutted it and converted it to the Fort Lewis Military Museum. According to an article published in the Post newspaper, then known as the Fort Lewis Ranger, in 1987, the hauntings continued even after the building stopped being a hotel. Eventually, this article says, things got so out of hand that 3 priests were enlisted to perform an exorcism. One of them stood in the weapons park and prayed before entering the building, Barbara Bauer, the museum director at the time, said in the original article. Then all 3 of them went up to the second floor where the man had been killed and said prayers and performed rituals. Afterwards, they came down and told me what happened. They said the man's spirit appeared to them. He told them that he was angry at himself because he had done something to cause his own death. They told him he was forgiven and free to go. The story ends with the man fading away in the doorway, stopping for a moment to cry before disappearing entirely. However, whether this exorcism took place or not is up for speculation. Miles Grant, the museum director who was interviewed by Marissa Petrick of the Northwest Guardian in 2011, he did say that even then, strange sounds and equipment malfunctions continued to occur, and most often on the second floor, where the supposed murder had happened. The Catholic Church evidently keeps diligent records of exorcisms, and the Seattle Archdiocese has no record that any of its priests ever carried out such a ritual. It is then possible that the event was carried out by Army chaplains and remained undocumented, perhaps being done informally to avoid unwanted publicity. But the museum's director otherwise could find no record of either the murder in the 1920s or the exorcism in the 1980s. Whatever the case, the hauntings clearly didn't stop. In 1999, 2 military policemen, a man named John and his desk sergeant, were working the night shift on Fort Lewis when they received a report that the burglar alarms at the museum were going off. so they raced over to stop the break-in. But they found the museum locked up tight, with no signs of forced entry. Then returning to the MP station, again, the alarms went off. So they returned, and again they found nothing unusual at the museum. And this apparently continued to happen throughout the night. Hardly strange, and quite possibly something very practical, like the result of mice chewing on the alarm system's wiring. But with the possibility of an intruder still on the table, a couple nights later, John was on shift again, and he and his partner were instructed to patrol the museum's perimeter to discourage any thieves from returning. But while passing one of the building's outer gates, John said that he suddenly felt a sense of heaviness and physical chills. His sergeant later told him he was not the first person to report something like that. Other MPs would report seeing the building's lights flickering on and off when they found the museum was empty, and none of the alarms had sounded to indicate an intruder had entered the building. Looking for a thrill, after hearing about John's encounter, his girlfriend, June, who had relayed all of these accounts to Jefferson Davis for his book, she admits that maybe she had just mentally tricked herself into believing this, but she said she did experience something strange when she and John went back to the museum one night so that June could try to relive his paranormal experience. She said that after getting out of the car and approaching the same gate that John had walked by, she too started to feel an overwhelming sense of coldness and dread, which filled her to the point where she became terrified and immediately ran back to the car. And as the two started to drive off, June said she could have sworn that she saw the outline of a figure standing in the top window of the museum. Unless I am much mistaken, this haunting and these reports of strange things in the building have continued even until today. I got off my last deployment in 2015, and within a few weeks, I had to run my annual physical fitness test. Thought it wasn't going to be a problem, and then my run time just dropped off, and that was the first time that I really felt like my body wasn't doing what it used to do, and since then, it's just felt harder to stay lean, to keep energy, to bounce back, and so I started looking into it, and one thing that kept coming up was testosterone. Most guys don't realize that our levels naturally start dropping in our 30s, which can make it easier to gain fat, harder to keep muscle. That's what led me to Mars Men. If you want to check it out now, it's mengotomars.com. It's a natural supplement designed to support healthy testosterone levels with ingredients like Tongkat Ali, Shilajit, zinc, and boron. No weird stimulants or synthetic hormones. What I like about it is that it's simple and it's clean. It's made in the USA, third-party tested, and it comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. For a limited time, get 50% off for life, plus free shipping and 3 free gifts at mengotomars.com. That's mengotomars.com for 50% off and 3 free gifts. After you purchase, they'll ask where you heard about them. I'd really appreciate it if you support the show and let them know who sent you. Now, while we're on the topic of health, the other thing I started realizing is my body just doesn't recover the same way it used to. On this side of the age of 30, I've got body aches, joint pain, my workouts take longer to recover from. So as I'm researching this, one thing that keeps coming up is collagen. Your natural collagen production apparently starts dropping around your 20s. But collagen is what supports your joints, your muscles, your skin. That's what led me to check out Bubs Naturals Collagen Peptides. If you want to check it out now, I'll link it in the description, but it's bubsnaturals.com. I'm really happy with this stuff. I just throw a scoop into my morning coffee. There's no taste, no clumps, nothing weird. It's also clean, no sugar, no fillers, third-party tested, NSF certified for sport, Whole30 approved, and sourced from grass-fed, pasture-raised cattle. They also make creatine hydrate or dye electrolytes and MCT oil creamers. And I respect the mission behind the company. It honors former Navy SEAL Glenn Bub Doherty, and they donate 10% of profits to charity. Live longer with Bubs Naturals. For a limited time only, our listeners get 20% off your entire order at bubsnaturals.com with code WarTimeStories. After you purchase, they'll ask where you heard about them. It really helps us out if you let them know who sent you. My name is Corporal Oscar with the United States Marine Corps, and I have a story I'd like to share with you from our platoon's time in Bridgeport for mountain training exercise. A couple years ago, from September to October, our platoon Alpha 2 of 1st CEB Combat Engineer Battalion went to Bridgeport for a joint exercise with our Victor Unit 2-1. Before we got there, we were briefed back on Camp Pendleton about things like high-altitude pulmonary anemia and how the oxygen difference with the altitude could cause hallucinations. We also heard other strange stories about the training area, such as people sometimes waking up right as marine animal packers, Marines patrolling with horses and donkeys, would unexpectedly walk through the middle of the patrol bases at night because the animal packers course used the same training area. Anyway, when we got to Bridgeport's lower base camp, we were given 2 days to acclimatize our bodies to the altitude. In that time, we explored the surrounding mountains, and we may or may not have climbed up mountains we weren't supposed to and taken some cool pictures. The strange activities, though, started around 2 weeks into Bridgeport. We'd always make jokes about skinwalkers coming by and grabbing us in the middle of the night, but something did actually show up. Yo, Rambo, put your damn knife away and help me get these tarps up.
All right, but one, it's a bayonet. And two, you gotta admit this thing is pretty damn cool. Look at this thing.
How much you pay for that thing anyway?
$250.
Damn, bro. Seriously? Did it come with a Camaro and 29% financing?
Whatever, man. This thing is awesome. I mean, it's a classic.
Just help me get the damn tarps up, will you?
All right.
One night during an operation we called the COOL, C-O-O-L. I'm not sure what it stands for, probably Combat Operations, something. We were at Bridgeport's highest landing zone, LZ Owl. We'd set up shelter with our tarps for the night. I should mention this tree we hooked our tarps on was growing up against a large rock face. I was a Lance Corporal at the time. I had with me one other Lance Corporal, engineer, and Lance Corporal Water Dog, a water specialist, and we used large rocks like small boulders and wooden stakes to anchor down our tarps to make a pyramid shape against the tree. So one end of the tarps was attached to the tree, and it was like a lean-to kind of built around the entire perimeter of this tree, so any water would roll off and keep our gear and us dry underneath. Another thing of note, the water dog we had with us would often be messing around with his rifle because he had a bayonet with him, and he'd stick it on the end of his rifle. He liked playing with it, he liked showing it off. So once night came and the freezing snow started falling, we went under our tarps and into our sleeping bags. This was around 9 p.m. I woke up around 10 p.m. to the sound of someone racking the charging handle of their weapon back. It's dead quiet up there. And we're supposed to be in a tactical environment, so making unnecessary noises like that is going to piss somebody off. So I look around, and me and my other engineers' M4s were on the ground next to us, and only the water dog's rifle was around the backside of the tree, where only he could see it.
Rambo, you awake?
It was dark,
Yeah.
and so I figure
What's up?
it's this guy. He must be screwing around with his bayonet again.
Is that you?
So I asked him if that was him messing with his rifle.
No. Wasn't me.
He gets up out of his sleeping bag and tells me that it wasn't him. So now I'm thinking that someone, maybe one of the infantry guys that we're training with, has snuck up to our patrol base and is messing with us. So I pull out my K-bar and I crawl out from under the tarps. I'm gonna go threaten some poor guy who thinks he's gonna scare us, right? But there was nobody else nearby.
What the hell?
Hey, Oscar,
Yes, Sergeant.
what the hell are you doing?
I heard a noise. Did you hear like a rifle or something?
Yeah, is that you guys?
No, Sergeant.
What's with the knife?
I came out because I thought it might be one of the infantry guys or something.
Yeah, okay. Let me go ask the fire watch, see if they're screwing around. God.
So when I came out, my sergeant, he sees me coming up out of our lean-to, and he walks up to me and asks me what the hell I'm doing, standing there holding a knife and all. And I asked if he'd heard the noise that we did. And he said that he did, thinking it was one of us racking our rifles, which I told him it wasn't. So then he walks over to the nearby infantryman on fire watch, and he asks if he or his guys were screwing around with their rifles. But that guy also knew nothing about it. So our sergeant comes back up and tells us that, and says to just go back to sleep. So I went back in my sleeping bag, and I forget all about it. Next time I woke up was 6 a.m., reveille. But now, our tarps are all on the ground, like something had pulled them down off the tree. And the small boulders we used to hold them down, they are nowhere to be found. And the stakes, same story, gone. So, as we're trying to figure out what had happened with our tarps, our sergeant comes back up and tells us what he saw earlier that night. He said he didn't mention it because he thought he was seeing things at the time. But after he told us to go back to sleep, and I had crawled back into my sleeping bag, my sergeant said something caught his eye up at the top of the rock face behind us. And so he looks up and he sees this bald, naked, human-looking figure with shining eyes looking over from on top of the rock face. And as soon as he spotted it, he said he saw it duck away immediately. My first thought was a video I'd seen of a guy who was filming his house because he thinks there's a skinwalker or rake around his house. And when he sees it on top of his roof as he's filming it, as soon as he saw it, this thing also ducks behind the house and disappears. So, again, my sergeant thought he was just seeing things. So, he said he just went back to bed as well. But now, with the tarps being messed with, I guess he thought he should tell us about it. We don't know what it was. Maybe somebody was messing with us. But I think we would have heard them moving around if it was a person. Whatever it was far more disciplined in silence than any infantryman or Marine that I've ever met. I have a few pictures here as proof of our time in Bridgeport, if necessary.
Hey, stop! What's the matter, man? You see somebody?
It's a frickin' kid, man. Scared the shit out of me.
Which way did he go?
God. He ran into this back room over here. Hey! Come out of there, now! Do not make me come in there and get you. Come out, now! Ah, stupid kids, man. Hey, kid. I said, come... What the...
Everything all right, man?
Dude, I just saw a kid run in here. Did you see him come out?
Bro, I didn't see anybody. Are you sure you weren't just seeing things?
Fuck you, man. I saw a fucking kid. As much as I'm looking at you right now, I saw a fucking kid run in here.
All right, well, maybe you should be the first to go down for sleep shift tonight, huh?
To hell with this place, man. Gives me the creeps.
This first story was submitted by an Army veteran using the handle @BlackJeepConvertible. He writes, "In Iraq, we lived in a war-torn 4-story shopping mall, which means we also pulled our own security, solo. One of the rooms we used to pull security became infamous for paranormal activity, which started around midnight with eerie, unexplained noises, the activity then peaking around 3 a.m. with crazy, unexplainable stuff. In that room, we sat in a corner, staring out the windows. We would hear feet shuffling and footsteps behind us the entire shift, so we all got used to it. It's not like we had a choice anyways. Then around 3 a.m., the witching hour, crazy stuff starts happening. One of my friends had a giant black trash bag that was lying next to him. It was full of empty Rip-It cans and water bottles that got flung into the air, throwing trash everywhere. He got so scared, he threw his chair across the room and called SOG to spend the rest of his shift with him. We had sergeants chase kids into empty rooms when there was only one door in and out. We were supposed to be the only ones inside the mall. No local civilians, especially not kids. Another one of my friends ended up literally frozen in fear when he saw a grayed out, transparent Iraqi soldier walk up and sit next to him during his shift. He said he just froze the entire shift and tried not to look at it. The entire exterior of the mall was riddled with bullet holes and craters, so we figured a bunch of people died there before us. But we later found out the one room we experienced the most activity in was formerly a discotheque, a party room, club, where Saddam's two sons tortured and killed people. That room also led to the roof, where they had apparently tossed people off of the building. My worst witching hour experience wasn't as bad as others. My shift that night was midnight to 0400. It started with feet shuffling behind me for hours, which wasn't too bad to get used to. And I was trying not to look away from the windows where there was at least some ambient light coming in, because when you're wearing night vision, all you see is a green circle through one eye and complete darkness through the other. It gets really creepy when you turn your head, because if you do see something scary, it won't show up until it's directly in front of you due to the loss of peripheral vision looking through the night vision lens. So, after maybe 3 hours of staring into nothingness, it's now about 0300. And all of a sudden, I hear and feel a whisper next to my ear, as if someone had their lips half an inch away from my ear.
Don't fuck with me! You know I'm scared of this shit! I will shoot!
I have never moved so fast in my entire life. I simultaneously stood up, turned around, gun up, light on, ready to shoot a ghost. I was hoping it was someone pranking me, but there wasn't anyone around me. I went and checked all of the adjacent rooms, but they were clear. So I broke an entire box of chem lights and tossed them all over the room, thinking, I'm gonna be able to see anything coming now. But that just gave the room a really eerie green glow. Before, I couldn't see a single thing. Now, I think I'm seeing things moving because it's so dimly lit. I ended up spending the rest of my shift facing the room with my back against the window. I couldn't give a damn what was happening outside anymore. They could have had a VBID drive right up to us. I was more scared of the ghosts than anything. Another subscriber with the handle @GoodyTiger57, another Army vet who visited the same location, responded to his comment and his story with the following. The very first day we got to that mall, we were all like, holy hell, this place is really creepy. Like Shaun of the Dead times 100, and we were either late teens or barely old enough to drink, so obviously the first thing we did was go straight into the basement to check it out. It was pitch black and really creepy. Didn't matter if we had guns, it still felt really scary. Out of our group, me and a few guys were the first to run out of there. Seen too many scary movies to stay there any longer. The last ones to leave kept saying they saw stuff, but we figured they were just messing with us because we chickened out and it was only month 1 out of 15 of our stay. Never really went back down there, as OP6 and the surrounding hallways were scary enough.
So what's your favorite thing to do here on the island once you're off ship?
You know something I really want to do? It's illegal. There is, you heard of Stairway to Heaven?
Is that a hiking trail?
Yeah, it's so, yeah. Well, no, it's a rickety ladder, stairway that they built on the side of the mountain.
Okay.
You have to go over to Kaneohe on the Marine Corps base side.
Right.
You can see the stairway off of the H3 if you're heading down. I mean, have you been to that side of the island?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, basically, you can climb up this rickety ass ladder.
Hold up.
Chief?
Oh shit.
Chief? You okay? Chief, what's wrong?
There's a fucking ghost in Shaft Alley.
What?
There's a fucking ghost in Shaft Alley.
Submariner here. There are few things as unnerving as wandering about the engine room from 2330 to 0530 alone on watch. When the boat is largely shut down in port, it becomes a very quiet place. The roving watch usually makes it an hourly game to speed through their log rounds, especially in the lower levels. During one particular period that we were in port, the boat was moored in Pearl Harbor, and a few people started complaining about having this really uneasy feeling. I was on the mid-watch as the SEO on evening shift, and a senior chief came back to do his required 0300 tour. We saw him walk past, maneuvering on his way to Shaft Alley. This particular senior chief was the crusty old salt type, and would usually spend a bit of time just sitting in the lower levels of the engine room and contemplating life, alone down there. So, we expected as much. What we didn't expect was to see him literally running into the maneuvering area a few minutes later. The man was now pale-faced and breathing heavily. We sat up straight, our eyes as wide as his, thinking we were about to have to make an announcement and deal with some kind of ship casualty. He then slumps into the EDO chair. A few tense and silent moments go by. We're on pins and needles. He finally opens his mouth and tells us about the fucking ghost in Shaft Alley. He explains what he saw, swearing that a sailor passed by him as he was sitting on a trash can in Shaft Alley. His first response was to call out to the guy to see who it was. But then he realized this guy wasn't dressed right. He describes what this guy was wearing. And what he's describing clearly is not like our uniforms, but something more like the old World War II naval uniforms. So he quickly gets up off the trash can to go catch up to this guy, and he does. He catches up to him all the way aft. This guy then turns towards the senior chief, looks right at him, then turns away and literally walks through the ass end of the boat, right through the bulkhead. It's now that the senior chief decides that it's time for him to leave Shaft Alley, and promptly does so. He swears up and down that he knows what he saw and that he's not crazy. I sure as hell wasn't about to leave the maneuvering area that night to find out for myself.
Let's go. Project Site Lima. Let's go.
I'm out at the launching site. Set up patrol, quick! There's this huge storm coming towards me! Hurry! Get back! Get away!
It was a routine night at the Edwards Air Force Base Air Security Police Desk until the frantic call came in from the patrol on duty at the restricted site known as Project Logic. The man's voice was urgent and high-pitched with fear. "Send a patrol, quick. There's this huge form coming toward me. Hurry." His voice trailed off, and the sounds of gunshots could be heard through the receiver. Then, there was nothing but an ominous silence. When the patrol arrived, the guard was found in a dazed, incoherent state after having fired the full magazine in his gun. The Office of Special Investigation was called in. According to one military source, the patrol vehicle was found overturned, the patrolman's rifle snapped in two, and huge, five-toed, bare, human-like footprints crisscrossed the area. The patrolman had not been injured, but was terrified. While no official report of this incident can be found in the archives of the base's historical department, the rumor circulated throughout the Air Force Police that the man at Project Logic was deeply affected by his encounter that night. They said he was placed in a military hospital and eventually sent to an overseas base.
Hey, 3 toes, huh? What do you make of it, Whitaker?
The hell if I know. These footprints are the damnedest thing I've ever seen. How about you, Barton? You said you saw some kind of blue lights out here?
Well, if you two promise you won't laugh, I'll tell you.
Okay.
Deal.
Momo.
Huh? Come again?
Momo. We got him back home in Missouri. Big, ugly things. Hairy, maybe 7, 8 feet tall. Never seen one myself, but I got family that's seen him. Shot at one once that came onto our property looking to steal.
Okay, then...
What about the blue lights?
I shine.
I shine? You mean the Momo?
Yep. These things see pretty well in the dark. Probably caught my headlights from a distance. Thought it was a car at first, but these are not tire tracks. Best we get in the vehicle soon.
Air Force Police Sergeant Barton had an open mind about creatures. His relatives in Missouri had seen and shot at the mammoth Bigfoot-like monster known as Momo, and though he trusted their accounts of the incident, he also realized the doubt and ridicule they were subjected to when they talked about it. As a result, no formal report was made to the Air Security Police concerning what happened in the winter of 1974. Barton was on patrol in the vicinity of the Rocket Propulsion Laboratory and saw what he described as strange blue lights in the nearby mountains. Assuming the lights to be from a car, Barton drove toward them in order to intercept any unauthorized trespassers. The lights vanished when he arrived at the site where he had last seen them, but now he found his vehicle mired in the soft desert sand. Walking approximately 2 miles back to base, the sergeant intercepted a patrol, and they radioed for a tow truck. When the truck arrived and everyone returned to the sergeant's vehicle, they found 3-toed tracks measuring 14 inches long, with what appeared to be a clawed digit at the heel. The wind was blowing soft sand, and the footprints were filling in rapidly, making any precise identifications difficult. But whatever it was had completely circled the truck as if inspecting it, and then walked off on 2 legs into the desert.
HQ, come in, over.
This is HQ, send it.
This is Sergeant Jones. Could you tell the replacement to hurry up? I might need some help, over. What in blue blazes is that?
You're patrolling the rocket testing site, correct?
That is affirmative. I'm not sure what I'm seeing out here, but whatever it is, it's big, and I might need some help. Over.
Roger that. Stand by.
3 weeks later, and also on patrol, Air Force Sergeant Jones was parked in the region of the rocket site. It was close to midnight. The moon was up when suddenly Jones noticed a shape moving across the skyline of a nearby hill. While he couldn't estimate its height, the trunk area or girth was described as immense. The sergeant quickly grabbed his radio microphone and called HQ. "Tell the replacement to hurry up. I might need some help," he urged. As Jones looked back again to the hill, two large, luminescent green-blue orbs, like eyes, were moving towards him. "They didn't really seem to me like they were bouncing the way a person would when walking," he said. "They kind of floated, or were moving on an easy glide." Car lights appeared down the road, and the patrolman lost no time in getting out of his truck and walking to meet the vehicle. At that moment, he was extremely grateful that the men had responded so quickly to his call for help, but that was not actually so. The other vehicle had been ordered into the area in response to a report about strange lights being observed in the hills. Yet no unauthorized cars had been located, and now the glowing eyes had disappeared. All that remained in the vicinity were unusual marks on the ground. Two rounded depressions measuring 6 inches and 2 inches in diameter, respectively. There were foot tracks as well. "They were all over the place," Jones said. "There were so many of them that I couldn't follow any trail." Barton, who had found tracks around his truck a few weeks earlier, said that they were similar to what he had seen. The other man along on the patrol didn't even get out of the car. He said he didn't want anything to do with it. Can anybody blame him?
Sometimes I think I should have been a pilot. Hey, flying cabs must be nice.
You'd think so, but I don't have the brains for it. And as I say, it's not a matter of if you crash, it's when.
Well, truer words.
Sage advice. You seen the new flick yet? Raiders of the Lost Ark?
I haven't. I've been meaning to take the wife once we're off rotation. Why? You seen it? How was it?
It's not bad. It's got that Han Solo bloke in it, and Connery, and Nazis. I'll have to just wait till you find out. I shouldn't spoil it for you, but you are not going to... But hang on a minute.
What is it? Something about the film?
No.
What? What's wrong?
Do you see that? Over there. By the tree line about 80 meters out.
Who the hell is that?
More like, what the hell is that?
It's gotta be a person. Standing upright. Costume or something.
It's way too early for Halloween, mate. That's an animal of some kind.
In the early 1980s, the Cold War, now simmering for the better part of 40 years, had the forces of NATO and the Soviet Union teetering on the edge of an all-out war, while looming hypothetical World War III was largely thought to be determined by the thousands of nuclear warheads leveled at one another across the Iron Curtain. The armies of the free world at this time deployed millions of troops to Western Europe. Working alongside regional and international allies, these troops prepared and trained for this coming war, intending to be the rock that would break the coming red tide. For a young British soldier named Francis, all of this only meant countless hours of overnight drills in preparation for a mighty struggle that would ultimately never come. On one such night in 1981, Francis, then stationed in West Germany, tells us that he found himself in an open field some 60 miles south of the city of Detmold. With the help of another soldier, these two men were tasked with establishing an HLZ, a helicopter landing zone, in order for their unit's squadron to practice some routine night touch-and-goes, landings and takeoffs. That afternoon, they arrived at this field, which was commonly used for military exercises, and went about their procedures as they had done dozens of times before without incident. As it got dark and the crickets came out, the stillness of the night was only occasionally interrupted by the comings and goings of the helicopters. With little else to do but to stand by the field and observe these helicopter exercises until they were concluded, Francis and his friend did what all true Brits do when they had a bit of downtime. They made tea and casual conversation, something to keep them warm against the chilly night air. As yet one more helicopter touched down and lifted back off into the sky, the sound of its rotor blades rippling off into the distance, the two Tommies were once again left alone on the desolate landing zone, or so they thought. Around 1:30 a.m., as the two men eagerly awaited for the arrival of the final helicopter so they could pack up and leave, one of the men spotted something on the far side of the landing zone. Francis recounts what he saw. I looked to where he was pointing, and standing on the edge of the woods, about 80 meters across the clearing, was a figure. It was a full moon, so it was quite bright and stood out easy to see. It stood on two legs, about 7 or 8 feet tall. It had yellow eye shine, and the body kind of shimmered in the moonlight. It made no sound, and it just really put the shits up us. It just stood there, watching us. We then heard the last cab getting closer to us, coming in for a landing, and at that point, this thing then dropped onto all fours and backed back into the woods. As soon as that cab left, we packed up and were out of there. We had a track to drive down to get back to the main road, and we must have done that at 60 miles an hour to get out of there. We never said anything to anyone, as it's not the thing to do. A brave soldier fighting the Russian hordes, but being frightened of the woods is not the image you want to give. But after that night, I avoided doing night landing sites and never felt comfortable in the woods on exercises doing night stags. We both know what we saw and didn't imagine it. I know Germany has a lot of werewolf and cryptid stories, but that night, I got well and truly shit scared and can remember it like it was last night.
Hey, is that a new optic?
Yeah, Recon 3 or something. LT wanted me to test it out and then train everybody else.
How's it working?
Well, I'll put it this way. I am just pushing buttons and seeing what happens. Oh. Okay, I do see... Huh. Looks like we got a couple of tally just over there.
How many?
Oh, maybe 2? 3? It's just a big blob. It's hard to tell. It's like they're all huddled around. Oh.
What?
That can't. Hey, how tall would you say the trees are around here?
Huh?
The trees. How tall on average are the trees?
Oh, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 feet?
That's what I thought. I was deployed as an infantry team leader with the Army in the Kunar province of Afghanistan from 2008 to 2009. One night, we set out on an observation patrol to overlook a village that we suspected IEDs, improvised explosive devices, were coming out of due to a successful IED recovery a few weeks prior. My lieutenant gave me a new thermal imaging system called the Recon 3 that none of us were familiar with, and told me to figure out what I could and pass along that information to the other team leaders. I started to look across the valley to what I could see, and that led me to look along the spur we were set in on, catching on a very large heat signature at the top of one of the false peaks. I did everything I could to get a clear image, suspecting that it was a group of Taliban huddled together around a light, as they tend to do in the mountains. All of a sudden, the heat signature stood up as one being, The trees in that area grew to about 10 to 12 feet tall, and this thing was at least as big, if not taller, than the trees that surrounded it. It started taking steps parallel to my position and was covering ground quickly with ease. Its stride was slow and relaxed, and yet it moved with incredible speed. That led me to believe this creature was gigantic. It very quickly traversed the landscape, and I lost sight of it along a neighboring spur. I couldn't believe what I saw initially, assuming I had imagined it. I never had seen anything like that in my life. I didn't tell many people about it, either when I was still in the army and even when I got out. I kept it to myself, thinking there was no way I saw what I saw. But then, in 2010, I listened to a story on Coast to Coast, specifically the story about the Giant of Kandahar. That made all the memories of my time in service come flooding back and made me consider other things I saw during that deployment. For instance, the Kandahar creature was described as having fire orange red hair, and it reminded me of a tradition that the locals in the area of my sighting would do. The Afghanis would dye their hair a bright orange color, and even dye their goats the same color. They never gave any explanation why. It seemed like it was every once in a while they would do this, and then all of a sudden those orange-dyed goats would be gone, and the locals' hair would also no longer be dyed orange. I assumed maybe it was a cultural thing. I didn't understand, but now it makes me wonder if that was some kind of gesture to the creature, or if the goats were being sacrificed to it. I am a Christian, and the Bible briefly discusses beings called the Nephilim. I think that's what I saw, a member of an ancient race of giants.
All right, lad. This will be the last one.
All right.
Damn.
Having some trouble there, Mr. Warner.
Oh, well. When your bones are old and withered like mine, you won't be laughing, boy. Now, you know where you're going?
Aye. To General Green and their Continental camp down yonder.
Good lad. Now get on your way before the sun goes down.
Easy, boy.
6-pounders. Lots of them. Just to get going.
Well, what about you, Mr. Warner? If the Redcoats find out about your aid to the Continentals...
There, you mind that. Just stay with the General till things quiet down. Understood?
Yes, sir.
Along the banks of the Tar River, we find David Warner, a rough man with a well-known hatred of the British, tending to his grain mill, preparing yet another shipment of goods for the nearby Continental Army encampment. Despite his young assistant's pleas to flee in the wake of approaching British forces, Warner, a proud patriot, refused to abandon his mill to the King's soldiers. An Irishman known to keep a hot temper and a fighting spirit, rarely one to shy away from speaking his mind, it was this sort of inhospitable attitude towards the British that would set in motion a grisly crime. Sometime later, the British troops would indeed arrive at the mill, a small patrol of 5 knocking on Warner's door in search of provisions. As armies of the time largely lived off the land as they trekked through the region, an intact grain mill would certainly be a vital asset to British forces in the area. Despite the British troops initially presenting a civil disposition, their mood gradually changed as Warner deliberately ignored their requests, pretending as if they weren't even there. Calling out to a worker inside the mill, he's reported to have said, "Try to save every ounce of it, my lad, and we'll deliver it to General Green. I'd hate to think of those British hogs eating a single mouthful of gruel made from America's corn." Upon hearing this, any appearance of civility the soldiers were willing to maintain immediately vanished. They restrained Warner, now marked as an enemy sympathizer, and subjected him to a brutal beating with their fists, boots, and rifle butts. Finally, they dragged the battered patriot to the edge of the flowing Tar River and began to deliberate on the traitor's fate.
Well, that wasn't terribly smart, was it then? Wouldn't expect much more from a rebel. You have passion, I'll give you that. Tell me, if you, a patriot, happened across a traitor to the cause, what fate should they meet? Tar and feather? Hanging? Maybe a swim in the river, perhaps?
All right, he's had enough, yeah?
What?
You don't know when to leave well enough alone.
You said it yourself. All those who stand against His Majesty deserve to die a traitor's death. Something funny now.
You can do what you want, lobster. Drown me if you'd like. One way or the other, this war will be the death of me. But rest assured, if and you do kill me, that Banshee will get you. She'll scream and scream and bring you to the depths of hell, I swear to you.
What was he on about?
Just more paddywhack, superstitious rubbish. Why don't you tell your Banshee we'll be sending the rest of your rebel friends your way very soon? Stand him up. I hope you're a strong swimmer, Mr. Warner.
Standing Warner to his feet, having tied both his hands behind his back and tying several heavy rocks around his feet and neck, one of the soldiers, a man bearing unnaturally evil eyes and a cruel mouth, egged them on, at which they shoved him off the embankment. But as soon as Warner's body plunged into the flowing waters of the Tar River, a shrill, mournful scream echoed across the river, causing the three men to then flee back to the mill. That night, however, would bring about an even more terrifying ordeal for these murderous men.
What the bloody hell is that?
The British soldiers' commander and accompanying officers had arrived at the mill, making camp and bedding down for the night. As the full moon hung in the sky and the rain crow announced a coming shower, a thick layer of fog began to creep its way across the river towards the encampment, the majority of its men now fast asleep in their tents. It was then that a terrifying sound shattered the peaceful Carolina night. A woman shrieked and wailed into the darkness, her tormented cries waking some of the officers and spurring the sentries on duty to investigate. Her sad, passionate lamentations drew the soldiers' attention to the river's edge, where they then witnessed an incredible sight. Materializing out of the river's looming fog was a woman. Her eyes, red from crying, were shrouded by a traditional veil, further aided by a head of beautiful flowing hair. The officers, transfixed by the haunting sight, watched the spectral woman as she wept and sang eerie songs of pain and loss. After several moments, the woman was once again overtaken by the fog, seeming to vanish into thin air as her screams echoed from somewhere further down the river. The British officers, terrified and dumbfounded, found themselves at a complete loss of words for what had just occurred. The terrifying supernatural experience brought about a feeling of supreme repentance in the three British men who had thrown poor David Warner to his death into the river earlier that day. The three of them immediately confessed their crime to their commanding officer. Infuriated at the account of their heinous crime, their lack of human decency, and no less their actions unbefitting a soldier in the British Army, he handed them all a brutal punishment. These three men would spend the remainder of the war, if not the remainder of their lives, whichever came first, replacing the now dead Mr. Warner and fulfilling his duties at the mill. As the story goes, this sentencing sealed their fate. Every day, they were made to work within the sweltering confines of the mill, churning out sacks full of grain for their comrades on the front lines. And every night, they were tormented by the Banshee's cry. Then one night, she appeared in the doorway of the mill, beckoning two of the men to follow her into the looming fog. Transfixed by her otherworldly beauty, they obeyed, following her into the darkness, then down to the river, where they threw themselves in, never to be heard from again. The final soldier in the trio, the man with evil eyes, would eventually go mad, unable to block out the Banshee's incessant screams. Racked with terror and guilt, he would aimlessly wander the woods around the mill in the night, calling Warner's name, begging forgiveness for his terrible crime. It was only the Banshee that answered him. One day, his body was found, floating in the Tar River, in the exact spot where David Warner had been drowned. To this day, it is said that the Banshee still haunts that lonesome stretch of river where the mill once stood. On August nights, when the moon is new and the rain crow calls for rain, the Banshee will rise out of the mist and scream into the night, forever lamenting the tragic, senseless killing of David Warner.
What was that?
It's just that pod of dolphins. Ted's been following us for a while.
Wow, look at them go. I wish I could swim like that. My swim calls would be a lot easier.
Huh.
Something wrong?
I'm not sure. Never see dolphins act like that. It's like they're running from some...
Oh my God.
What the hell is... Is that a whale? Sailing through the Indian Ocean sometime in the late 90s, a U.S. Navy petty officer found himself stationed on his ship's forecastle with two other crew members. Together they scanned the horizon as their vessel plowed through the churning waters en route to Goa, located on the Indian coast. After hearing a series of loud, heavy splashes, the petty officer peered over the deck railing, his eyes locating a pod of dolphins breaking through the waves. They had been following the ship for the past few days. The dolphins were a welcome distraction for the lookouts, the monotony of their watch shift now broken by the dolphins' playful leaping and jumping in the ship's wake. However, their graceful motions suddenly turned into panicked maneuvers as the entire pod scattered from its tight formation. Then the men saw it. Looming beneath the foaming waves and making straight for the dolphins was a massive shape. At first believing it to be a whale because of its size, the petty officer's eyes widened as the dorsal fin broke the surface. A massive shark fin rising to a height that he estimated was at least 10 feet above the water. He couldn't believe they were witnessing a shark of that magnitude. It had to be some kind of whale. Maybe, he thought wildly, the dolphins were being attacked by a pod of orcas. But the fin looked nothing like that of a killer whale. But then, when the animal's distinctive head breached the ocean's surface, a dolphin in its jaws, the water now turning red with blood, all doubt left his mind.
The whale theory went out the window when I saw the head of this thing. I grew up in the Florida Keys. I have seen tiger sharks, bull sharks, and so on. This was a shark, plain and simple. The head of this massive shark resembled that of a tiger. It came out of the water and we watched this thing munching out a dolphin.
While the incident would go into their logbooks as an apparent whale sighting, the petty officer would catch word that the behemoth animal, whatever it was, had been picked up by the ship's underwater sonar. An acronym for sound navigation and ranging, sonar uses pulsing sound waves to map out underwater objects and terrain. The initial suspect in the dolphin attack, an orca whale, typically maxes out around 9 meters, or 29 feet in length. Whatever was picked up by the vessel's sonar, the petty officer said it came back with a reading that would put it at an astounding 25 meters long, or 82 feet from nose to tail. While it is possible that the chaotic movements of the dolphins attempting to flee the unknown predator confused the sonar, it is worth mentioning that 82 feet would place the mystery shark within the Megalodon's estimated growth range. The petty officer, still active in the Navy after 15 years of service, shared his encounter in January of 2000, which was then featured on the website of the Animal X cryptozoological TV show.
That's what I love. Staff duty. Sir, you have any idea which one of these keys opens this damn thing?
No, Staff Sergeant, I do not.
Oh, that's just great. It's like a Bugs Bunny cartoon. The garage, the front door, the back door. Why don't they label these things?
Where did she come from?
Oh. Young lady.
How'd she get over the fence?
Oh, I hope this doesn't mean paperwork. Young lady, you were not supposed to be in there.
Where do you think she came from?
She looks local. Sumimasen, Eigo Hanimashika? You have any idea how to say anything in Japanese?
No. No.
Young lady. All right. I gotta get this gate open.
Hey, where's she going?
Hey, don't walk toward. No, come back. Come back.
This first story was originally submitted to the Tales from the Grid Square Project by an unnamed Marine. Since he wrote this expecting it to be read primarily by other Marines, this story begins with him speaking about the widely accepted notion that there is a ghost of a small girl on Camp Schwab who haunts the ramp. The ramp is just a military term for a large, fenced-in parking lot used for storing and maintaining military vehicles. When I was in Okinawa, I rarely ever set foot on the base myself, but it seems that many Marines who spend time living and working on the base will at some point hear about this story. While some guys are rotated out on overseas deployments on an individual basis, this particular devil dog was deployed to Okinawa along with his entire unit, a cycling of troops in 6-month intervals, which is called a Unit Deployment Program, or UDP. It's a term he's going to be using. I wanted to clarify that. He writes, "So I never witnessed the ghost girl, but my staff sergeant saw her on the first UDP he was on. When I replaced my buddies during my UDP, they told me they saw her as well. From what I was told, back in the 70s or 80s, a 7-ton, one of the large troop transport trucks, ran over a little girl in the ramp area, and she's haunted that area ever since. In our first UDP in 2014, my staff sergeant was on battalion staff duty, and he and the duty driver were heading down to the ramp late at night to double-check everything was locked. From what he said, they pull up to the gate at the ramp, and he gets out and starts to get the gate unlocked. He looks up, and about 30 feet away, next to the last line of AAVs, there's this Japanese girl looking at him and the duty driver. She then walks past the AAVs, through the fence, and disappears into the jungle. My staff sergeant said, F that, and they hauled ass back to the battalion building. A couple years later, in 2016, I arrived a month early to do a changeover with the other company. I'm hanging out with my buddy, and he tells me that the prior week they were in the bay, one of the garage-type workspaces, working on an AAV track. It's late at night and pouring rain. There's about half a dozen guys working on getting this track fixed. He said they all just turned and looked out to the line of LAVs and AAVs, and there's this girl looking at them. And once they see her, she turns and walks through the line of vehicles and the fence back into the jungle. They all bounced and didn't want to hang around after that. I know some more of the guys I'd been with had witnessed this ghost, but those are the two that I recall in detail. We were always spooked if we were out there late at night. Some of the instructors would even talk about getting old radio transmissions from World War II when they were in Okinawa. They told us that if we get to Okinawa and are doing night ops, we might run into that while we were there. Huh. Just like clockwork.
See?
There she goes again.
I told you. Every night, Sergeant. I'm just glad you're here with me.
Why's that?
'Cause now I know I'm not crazy.
What kind of strange woman goes around wailing like that every night?
Always around 3 a.m. too. Maybe she needs help.
Mental help, most likely. But, you know, just in case, why don't you go check it out? I'll hold down the fort. You try to go find her, and let me know.
Yeah.
Just don't go too far. And get lost out there.
Yeah.
For quite some time, the United States military has maintained a presence in South America. They've got a number of bases scattered around various allied countries where American troops are stationed to train with and support local military forces. A former Army National Guardsman found himself deployed to one of these installations, the Sotocano Air Force Base in Honduras, during the summer of 2019. And doing a quick callback, we've been on this base before in a previous episode about a very large snake. So now we're dealing with this entity. Very interesting. Anyway, this Army National Guardsman writes, I've never experienced anything like Bigfoot or hovering shadows over OPs, faces, UFOs, haunted barracks rooms, etc. But I did have one weird experience. It was the Sunday before Memorial Day when I heard something that reminded me of it. Some kids were playing outside my house, and one of them scraped their knee pretty badly. The scream she made. Dude, I don't spook easy, but it made me stop what I was doing. Imagine the most painful scream, just pure agony. And that's what I heard 4 years ago on a TDY, a temporary duty, to Honduras. I was stationed at Sotocano Air Force Base in the summer of 2019. Being one of the few enlisted, and the most junior, I found myself being voluntold to be put on the night shift. It was pretty boring. My job consisted of logging things that happened overnight, keeping contact with other units, being there in case of an emergency, and roaming around the office building on patrols. Outside of training events, very little happened. I was literally paid to watch Netflix and play Total War for 3 months. As long as the coffee was made every morning and everything was logged, I was squared away. Other than learning how to make coffee and catching up on The Walking Dead and Breaking Bad, I encountered something strange. Now, my shift would run from 2200 to 1000. Around 0300, I would hear sobbing from somewhere outside the office. It would normally last for around 30 minutes, and it would always be a woman crying. Now, I thought I was going crazy until I had to battle track the nighttime trainings. Since there were a lot of moving parts, one of the NCOs would join me for that, and he would hear the sobbing too. Finally, after a few days of this, we had enough of it. He told me to go investigate the noise and report back to him what I found. It was around 03:15 when I walked out of the office. I lit up my smoke and took in a few drags before walking towards the noise. Strangely enough, as I walked in the direction of it, the sobbing seemed like it was going further and further away from me. almost as if whatever was making the noise was luring me away from the safety of our lit office building. I stopped near a shack that had some chicken coops and put out my cigarrillo. Grinding it under my boot, I was scanning the empty cabins for anything, any movement, anything out of place, anyone. But there was nobody other than myself outside. Feeling a bit weirded out, I lit another cigarrillo and took a few more deep drags before walking down the road, still continuing to follow these sounds. I did this until finally coming to a stop by a drainage pipe at the edge of the road. And the noises stopped. I'm not just saying the sobbing noises stopped, but all the noises stopped. The cicadas, the other nighttime sounds, everything. It was as if I had just stepped into a vacuum, like someone just flipped a switch and time just stopped. And I stood there for a while, kind of taking in the silence.
What the hell
is that coming from? It was creepy as shit, because I was the only person out there, and it was 3 a.m. I felt my hair stand on end, and I ran away from that drain pipe, cigar in mouth, and back to the chicken coops. I remember them squawking at me while I looked back at the end of the road. There was no one there, but the noises had started up again. I could hear everything now. Now I'm thoroughly creeped out. I put out my second cigar, and I ran back to the office. My sergeant asked me what happened, and I told him that we were just hearing the nearby chickens. He seemed pretty doubtful at the time and even laughed it off, saying, "Chickens, huh? Those are some weird-ass birds." And the next morning, nothing was said, and he didn't log it in the logbook. Neither of us said a word about it, until I got home and drilled with my home unit. One of my best friends, we'll just call him Junior, was from Puerto Rico. I told Junior about it over drinks after some drill. He looked at me as if he saw a ghost. And he told me, "You didn't hear a woman crying, man, because if you did, then you're gonna die soon." I asked him why, and he told me about La Llorona. Apparently, if you hear her wailing, then you or someone you know will die soon or might experience something horrible. Now, that's interesting because only a few nights after I had heard this woman, I was participating in a cross-training event with some Marines. We were sling-loading heavy loads to helicopters at night without any nods, night vision. On the last iteration, sometime between 0245 and 0300, something happened. Now, helicopter blades generate static electricity due to the friction in the air, which means the hookup team on the ground needs to have a grounding man. The grounding man is the most important person on the team. He holds a metal pole against the aircraft to make touching it safe. Everyone on the team needs to beware of the grounding man. If he lets go, then no one touches the helicopter, because if you do, then the charge that the helicopter generates can kill you. Now, thanks to the instability of the helicopter, our grounding man couldn't get a good ground, and he let go of the helicopter just as I was going to hook up to the load. If it wasn't for my sergeant, I would have been fried. He pulled on the back of my plate carrier, and we both fell back just as several tons of helicopter dipped down to where my head was and hovered just inches away from my face before it rebounded and flew off into the night. I'm not a very superstitious person, but hindsight is 20/20. Considering what I experienced the nights before, and having not heard the sobbing ever again, it certainly sent chills down my spine. Whatever was out there at 3 a.m. in the morning was there. I heard it. My sergeant heard it. Hell, even the other soldiers on the shift with me heard it. But none of us have any explanation for it. No one ever spoke about it, because, who would take it seriously? If anything, we just get piss tested over and over again and our leadership wouldn't give two shits. I know one thing. As much as I love a good ghost story, I don't believe ghosts exist. But whatever was out there at 3 a.m. certainly did. And she wanted to let us know that she was out there. Wartime Stories is created and hosted by me, Luke LaManna. Written by Jake Howard and myself. Audio editing, sound design, mixing, mastering, and production coordination by Alex Carpenter, with additional audio work by me. Animation and motion design by Hot Sauce Video, with additional animation support and production coordination by David Williamson. Research by Jake Howard and myself. Artwork by Pikata and Radomir Izgarovic.